That's great, Mary. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ian Menzies. I'm the Senior Education Officer in Education Scotland, leading on science, STEM, gender balance, amongst other things too. So it's really lovely to have you with us this afternoon. So I suppose the session this afternoon is really just a chance to share some of the thinking and some of the, the work that's been taking place in Forth Valley and West Lothian through our diversity pilot. And we've been running this in partnership with authorities, with schools and authorities, with colleagues in Skills Development Scotland. And what we're really keen to do is to extend this approach from the pilot to other schools across Scotland. So we're really keen to, to extend that invitation. And I suppose today is part sharing of what's been taking place so far, but also partly an invitation to other people to join and be a part of this work. So it's great to have you with us. Just to give you a bit of a background, in 2017, the STEM Education and Training Strategy was launched, and that had 4 key themes. One of the themes was around excellence. We had connection and inspiration, but a big part of that strategy was around equity and equality. And that's one of the reasons why we have Fiona and our Improving Gender Balance and Equalities team within Education Scotland. And really what we wanted to do with the STEM strategy was challenge the long-standing imbalances in STEM pathways that have been a feature of Scottish education for 35 years or more. And despite many of our efforts, that gender imbalance has hardly shifted, really. If you look at subjects, national qualification subjects like biology, dominated by girls, but also physics, computing, technologies dominated by boys. But there's also a big piece of work to be done around equity in terms of the extent to which care experienced young people are embarking in STEM pathways, or young people from our most deprived areas supported in those journeys. So for us, a big part of the strategy, to sum it up, is really about a STEM for all approach. And I think what our national data is telling us, we still have a way to go here to achieve that. And we know we have to sort of challenge traditions, cultures that have persisted for a long time. So today is really just that conversation about what we've tried, what we continue to try, and where we want to go, and perhaps how we can work in partnership with you to achieve that. And in the session today, we really hope to just engage in dialogue with you. There'll be some short inputs from some of the schools and others involved, but an opportunity for you to shape those discussions and to contribute as well. And I think all of this will be shaped, I suppose, through some of the wider agenda in terms of the Scottish Attainment Challenge, the stretch aims that local authorities have been asked to identify just now, and their ambitions to close the equity gap, because this is a big factor in this as well, and it's a big driver within the Scottish education. So we really want to frame it within the context of the Scottish Attainment Challenge. So to introduce you to some people today, we have Marjorie from Braes High School. Thanks for joining us, Marjorie. Karen from Larbert High School, and Callie from Falkirk Community Learning Development. We may also have our colleagues from Skills Development Scotland joining us, Craig and April. And in terms of education, Mary's introduced herself. Mary's the STEM officer for Falkirk. We've also got, Forth Valley and West Lothian. We've also got Fiona from our gender balance team. We've got Julie from our CLD team. And we've got Trish and Kit, who are our team advisors within Education Scotland. So we're taking a really joined up approach within Education Scotland to this as well. So as we go forward today, feel free to pop your thoughts and questions into the chat. When we come to discussion sections, please switch on your camera. We're really keen to keep it informal today and to really have a strong dialogue with you. I'm really looking forward to that engagement. And I think, Mary, handing back over to you now.
Actually, you're handing over to Fiona for
Fiona.
Kick us off. Sorry, thanks, Ian. And Julie, if you're able to move on to the next slide for us, that would be great.
Thanks. So I think Ian's already sort of outlined the focus for today's session. We'll spend a bit of time doing that kind of context setting as to what we've done already. Kit's going to speak a little bit about how data and the Scottish Attainment Challenge might influence this and be sort of used in this context. And then, as Ian has mentioned, we're going to hear from a couple of settings on their examples. So, Julie, if you could move the slide on to the next one, please. Just to give a bit of background, over the course of the pandemic, Education Scotland, Skills Development Scotland, along with STEM leads from Falkirk and Clackmannanshire Council, we've worked together with a couple of schools as part of a pilot project to explore diversity in STEM. And the working group developed an agreed set of key messages to sort of demystify and essentially myth bust around STEM. and the reasons why people do or do not want to choose STEM when it comes to options choice within schools and also beyond schools as well. And there were 8 key messages that we felt as a group it was important to explore. Sorry, I'm just seeing someone is saying about not being able to see the slides. I can see the slides, so yeah, it might be an idea to come out and then come back in again. So I'm just going to sort of share those 8 key messages that we came up with as a group. The first one was thinking about STEM within the current and changing context. Thinking about who it is that influences choice of young people, so teachers, practitioners and parents being the key influencers. Also that STEM has a really strong role within curriculum development, consideration of where the STEM jobs are, and as we've said already, why are young people choosing or not choosing STEM? So thinking about how we might tackle gender stereotypes in STEM, identifying and removing any other barriers, so thinking about that intersection with other characteristics, and also thinking about the parity and availability of STEM pathways. So if you could pop onto the next slide, Julie, please. So the project working group then took these 8 key messages and we developed resources, some of which you can see on the previous screen and also on this screen. One set of resources was professional learning resources for staff that could either be worked through independently or together during collegiate time. We also wanted to create materials that could be lifted and adapted to use with parents who we know are significant influences when it comes to options and pathways. And lastly, a set of materials, again, that could be lifted and adapted to use with learners. And we'll hear a little bit more about this later on. Ian also mentioned at the start as well about the gender balance and how that hasn't really changed. So I know it's quite small on that slide, but the graph there just really highlights the STEM subjects since the 80s, really, and how hopefully you can sort of see the trend has been pretty flat. So in 35 years, we've not really managed to impact that gender balance in STEM subjects, despite lots of interventions, such as Girls Into events. So I think, you know, it's important to evaluate the effectiveness of these one-off events and instead consider what more do we have to do. And again, we hope to outline some starting points to consider later on. Okay, next slide, please, Julie. So, as with lots of things, COVID impacted the work, but several months on, we're kind of still holding on to lots of possibilities and opportunities, a few of which are shown on the screen. So learning that's coming through is around demystifying STEM. So, you know, trying to change that perception that it's for white middle class brainy males, that it's difficult and niche, and instead highlight the transferability of STEM skills to all sorts of areas of life and work, and really promote that idea that it's for everybody. Also around growing STEM pathways, so making connections with colleges and universities and employers to explore apprenticeships, for example, and other relevant pathways. Thinking about the uptake of STEM, so ensuring that current skills and employment gaps in terms of STEM are filled in the future by a diverse workforce. And highlighted through the points that I've made so far, that kind of partnership working between all stakeholders, locally, regionally and nationally, to make that happen. So you've just heard some of the key messages around diversity in STEM that the pilot project was exploring. Julie, if you could move on to the next slide again. And I suppose at this point, we just wanted to invite, or we'd love to hear a little bit more from you about your priorities and actions you'd like to see around this theme of diversity in STEM. You know, perhaps some of the messages we've outlined already resonate with you. And just like to hear a little bit more about what you're working on, other things we can do together. So we've created a Jamboard, which I think you can either get through scanning the QR code or Julie's going to pop the link into the chat pane. We understand that some people will be up for talking, some people won't. So that's why we created the Jamboards. And I suppose, yeah, we're just opening up that discussion just now. So feel free to use the Jamboard or post in the chat pane or Julie, I don't know if you're okay to share the Jamboard, and we can sort of pull out the things that are coming in, but definitely feel free to unmute and come in on this.
Thanks, Fiona. I can see that there's probably about 10, 12 people in the Jamboard already. So sometimes when we ask these questions, it takes us a wee minute just to kind of load it up and to get it on board. And again, folks, as Fiona said, we want it to be as kind of informal as it can be in the kind of online environment. So if you'd rather just come on mic and say maybe what you're thinking based on what Fiona and Ian have shared so far. Hi, Trish. I think you've just joined us. Nice to have you with us.
Hello, Maddie.
Hi, great to have you with us, Trish.
Is now
So
joining.
folks, feel free to just let us know what you're thinking, what's the top of your head in relation to what's been talked through already around STEM and priorities. And I can see that someone's adding something to the Jamboard just now. If you haven't used it before, a Jamboard on the left-hand side, there's like just below the select tool, so fourth tool down, there's a kind of little post-it note. I think, Julie, if you can hover over it, then folks can see, and it brings up a Jamboard. You can change the colour and kind of add your thoughts to that in terms of what are you thinking around diversity in STEM and that gender balance or other kind of qualities issues. So that's great to see. We can see a post-it note coming through already. Someone saying family learning, including ESOL families. So that's maybe one of the, and we'll just maybe pull these down. So we've got priorities on the left and potential actions on the right. So feel free just to add them through. And if you want to say your name or your setting in that too, feel free to do that too. And we'll just maybe invite you to come in and to share your thoughts around that. And again, it might be that this is maybe a new conversation too, that you haven't previously considered it, and that's okay to say that too. We welcome all contributions. So there's Katie saying she's a priority for her at the moment is the national numeracy these days, which of course we've just been having one of them just last week, I think. So that's great to hear. That's something that you're kind of already working on. And a priority is kind of staff confidence in STEM. Yeah, that's a real big thing for staff to feel confident, even just to give it a go before they kind of take it forward at all with their learners or the groups that they work with. So no worries, Mr. Naismith, if you're struggling to get into the Jamboard, do you want to come on mic and say what you're thinking round about your priorities or your current actions? Feel free to do so. We thought we'd give maybe a couple of 5 minutes for this discussion, and then contribution before we move on to kind of a next input about SAC. So it's amazing to see. Thank you so much for your contributions here. Just maybe pulling some through ones. There's someone saying challenging that prototypical image of people who take up STEM. So yeah, I often kind of quote back to my experience in school 30 plus years ago, more than I choose to remember. And I was one of the only females in a physics class. And for me, that was almost quite a kind of daunting experience to some extent, but stuck with it. So that's, I don't know what that says about me, but certainly it's something that, females can find too. Mr. Naismith, do you want to come in? I saw your hand pop up there.
Yeah, sorry, I had to log in on my phone because I'm on the school computer and it doesn't have a microphone on it, so I'm fighting with technology. But I was just going to say what I started typing in the chat, but as diversity in STEM is something that I've recognised through when I've been working in the school and working with children is something that's important, is to highlight not just the diversity of people, but also the diversity of careers that are in STEM, which sounds like kind of the aims of that study as well. But I operate a STEM YouTube channel called STEM with Mr. N, and as part of that, every month I release an interview with a different person working in a different STEM field. So I've had like a Haitian American who does educational drones, a Sri Lankan engineer, a couple of females, a female engineer and a female forensic anthropologist. And I'm lining up the next round of interviewees, which are again a lot of females, but different types of engineers, forensic toxicologists. Tomorrow it's a bioarchaeologist. So I was just coming in to say that, you know, promoting diversity in STEM is something that I'm really quite passionate about, but not just the diversity of gender, but then the diversity of backgrounds, roots into STEM, because there's people I've spoken to that went through uni and other people quit uni and got an apprenticeship and that's how they got in. And so the diversity of roots, and then just the diversity of careers as well. And I suppose another big thing going forward is with the kids that we're teaching in primary, the STEM careers that are there now might not be there when they come out. There might be whole new ones. They might be creating whole new ones. But hearing from people that have done that and been at the forefront, I think helps the young people realise as well that that's something they could be involved in going forward. And I think I've rambled enough.
No, I think thank you so much for being brave enough and coming on mic and sharing that. We do really appreciate that. And yeah, your passion certainly comes through. And if you want to kind of pop your link to your channel, and I'm sure others might appreciate seeing some of that diversity that you were talking through. So yeah, I think absolutely diversity in STEM, not only the careers but the job opportunities that are there, and thinking about that from the earliest years. I noticed we had somebody from ELC on the call too. So there's lots coming through here from kind of professional learning for staff, for confidence for staff, and recognising that kind of STEM is everywhere. It's not necessarily the highbrow stuff that can actually be quite challenging for us. And I think that's some of the messaging that Ian talked about at the start, is round about STEM is for everyone, and there's a place for it within all of our lives and in our futures too. So there's a few actions coming through there that are really kind of nice to see, about using kind of enthusing the family with STEM, or kind of national events, and using the profile that they have in order to spur people on with that. Knowing about who the partners are, as well as some of the programmes that are available, which are really kind of great to support practice within schools. And just a wee notice, which we're going to come on to shortly, which is a greater uptake in STEM subjects. And I think that's one of the things that Karen and also Marjorie from Schools in Falkirk are going to speak about in a wee minute more. So Julie, thank you so much everyone for your contributions. That was really, really much appreciated. You'll see the kind of next two sort of discussion points that we have. And the board will be made available to you beyond this evening if you wish to kind of revisit it or to note some of the actions. Thanks, Julie. I'm just going to pass on to my colleague Kit, who is an attainment advisor with Falkirk and has a STEM background himself and has always been really passionate about exploring the use of STEM. So Kit, pass over to you to talk to us a wee bit about kind of the Scottish Attainment Challenge and data too. So thanks, Kit.
Thank you. So the first thing I'm going to do is post something, which is a link to a sway, which will give you dozens of hours of reading and videos and games and all sorts of fun activities around the Scottish Attainment Challenge. And that was taken from our national launch. So if you know all about this, please fall asleep for the next 3 minutes. Otherwise, I'll take a 3-minute rush through the Scottish Attainment Challenge. There is an expanded mission with the Scottish Attainment Challenge, which again I've put into the chat pane. And the Scottish Attainment Challenge is now built around a framework for recovery and accelerating progress. We've changed the resource allocation so that all local authorities as well as schools are getting some level of resource. Over 97% of schools are getting their pupil equity fund allocation, which they know they're going to get for the next 4 years. So that's set, and that's based on free school meals and a couple of other complicated calculations. And each local authority is now getting a set of resources based upon families living in poverty. So in the old Scottish Attainment Challenge, where we had challenge authorities and we had challenge schools and the university authorities, that's been changed. So each local authority has received a particular allocation of money, and for many local authorities that will increase over the 4-year period of the SAC, and there's enhanced support going in around SAC. One of the other big issues that has come to the fore is that in order to accelerate progress, then we need to put a bit of expectations into the system. So schools and local authorities and not schools are expected to set what is called stretch aims. Schools are going to be setting their own targets around what they want to achieve, but local authorities are now being asked to set stretch aims. So Julie, if you could move on to the next slide. And stretch aims are divided into core groups, into two groups. There's some core stretch aims and there's ones called Core Plus. But for this purpose, these are the core stretch aims that all local authorities will be asked to identify some targets around what level they want to get to. And some of these are specifically related to what we're talking about today. And I suppose the one that is closely related to that is the fourth one. I was going to say number D, but that's a bit Irish, and I'm not Irish at all. It's the proportion of 16 to 19-year-olds participating in education, employment or training based on the annual participation measure produced by Skills Development Scotland. And I think for everyone on the call, it's about the quality of that destination. And we all know that some of the destinations, the quality isn't great, and the earning potential of the learner entering those areas is not great, and the chance of that learner moving out of poverty and in some of these positive destinations is reduced. But STEM offers an opportunity for many learners to move into career pathways that offer them significant earning potential, and that potential to move themselves out of poverty in the long term, which is what we are really wanting to look at. So if you want any more information about SAC and the Attainment Challenge, you can look at what I've posted in terms of the SWAY, but please get in touch with your attainment advisor. Every local authority has one, and they're more than happy to come to talk to you or a group of your colleagues to try and support you in understanding that. And the last slide in my wee section is moving into the Sds Data Hub. Now, not everybody on this call will have access to this information, but they will have access to someone who knows about it. And that allows us to identify information about where learners have gone and how they've been successful beyond school. And it's based on their SQA number, and allows us to track what's happened to them. So who went where when they first left school, and what has happened to them as they've moved on from school. And that is information that your local authority can get you. There's somebody that has a login to that, and it may be something that you wish to continue to explore. Every school has access to that information as well, and it really allows us to build a longer term picture of where we need to support pupils so that they can maintain a successful destination. And if they've gone into something in college, was that successful? And where did they go after that college course? So I recommend that you do a bit of asking around and you throw in some of these words, but the SDS Data Hub is probably an underused resource and has huge amounts of information that can be gathered to promote the activity that we're talking about at the minute, and also to allow us to measure the impact of any activity that we put in place subsequent to this. So that's me, unless anybody's got anything they want to ask me. Silence is golden, so I'm going to pass on to Fiona.
Thanks, Kit. So I suppose, obviously there is a huge amount of data that's out there, and I think one of the things that we can be doing is looking at data through an equalities lens. So to help with that, we have produced a guide for secondary schools and primary and early years as well, two separate guides with sort of suggestions as to what data you might want to look at through this lens. It's not an exhaustive list, neither are we suggesting go out and collect it all and look at it all. But what's in that data guide is sort of questions around the data through that lens, prompting thinking around sort of unconscious bias, as well as sort of how stereotyping might have fed into what's in the data, but also how the data is actually analysed, so whose voices are heard. So examining sort of both quantitative and qualitative in relation to sort of wider ethos, thinking about those learner perceptions, behaviour and values, and really sort of highlighting that whole setting approach as well. And we hope that that can lead to the identification of the starting point. and as I said before, sort of thinking about that wider ethos, which might contribute to or perpetuate stereotypes that can affect attainment and then life and career choices, as we spoke about already. Thinking about what barriers might exist as well with gender or other protected characteristics. We also hope that the guides can provide that information too. In addition to the guides, we have also got a self-evaluation framework, which is designed to complement all the other self-evaluation frameworks that are out there. Again, hopefully it's got some kind of useful prompts around what you can do to improve the diversity and equalities in your setting. It does have a focus on gender, but each section's kind of got the overarching theme, followed by whether you're exploring, adopting or embedding it, and then some sort of examples of practice which might be useful starting points. So that section, the highly effective practice section, you'll see a clip of that on the screen actually in the yellow. People have fed back to us that these indicators of effectiveness are the most useful elements of that. So section 4 of the self-evaluation framework covers curriculum, skills, career education and choice. So for the purposes of this call, these might be the most useful places to start and have a look at, because the framework itself can be quite overwhelming. So I just wanted to sort of highlight those, and again, perhaps kickstart that thinking around looking at data in that way, and some considerations that might not have been thought about. And yes, as Julie has mentioned, we are currently working on CLD versions of these as well. So we hope to have those, get those piloted this year and hopefully produced at the start of next year. So with that in mind, we wanted to sort of come back to a bit of discussion again and sort of consider how might the use of data support diversity in your STEM context. So I suppose it's thinking about that learner journey, but also disaggregating the data. So again, we're inviting you to pop any comments onto the Jamboard. It's slide 2 on the Jamboard for this one, and equally welcoming people if they would like to unmute anything you've tried, anything that you think would be useful. Please do feel free to come in.
Thanks, Fiona. So we'll just give folks a wee minute just to kind of again digest, thinking around the Scottish Attainment Challenge and broadening that out, and the role of local authorities with the kind of stretch aims, the use of the Data Hub. And actually that was something as a parent, if you've got children yourself or youngsters that you work with, again, it could be sort of from 4th year onwards to guidance staff or kind of home tutors. Young people will be asked of maybe what their intended destination might be beyond school, and again that kind of gets entered into the Data Hub and tracks from sort of 4th year. Certainly my children have had that experience as well. So again, just thinking about what's that destination looking like can feed into the Data Hub. And as Fiona said, there's lots of information that's really useful in the guides too. So while I've been able to just fill in a wee bit of the space, we have a few people asking a question here. I'll just maybe move the post-it notes so we can see them. Somebody asking, do you have access to all the data that you need? That's a kind of really good question, because sometimes we can ask ourselves, what is the data that we need? What will tell us the story behind learners' experiences and what they might be choosing and where they might be heading to? So a kind of really good question there for us as practitioners to ask there. I see Kit's got his hand up. I'll just maybe pick up the other 2 post-it notes that we've got coming through just now before I invite Kit to come in. So other folks saying identifying target groups for STEM learning. And again, remembering that STEM learning can be that kind of science, technology, engineering and maths, or it can be that sort of more project-based ideal perspective as well. So again, thinking about, depending on our context, what that could look like and what the target groups, any sort of interventions that we may have may look like. Another kind of comment that someone's popped in there, which data allows us to see trends so we can try to intercept and mitigate barriers for lots of people. Yeah, so again, just being aware of some of that, the situations that go on that can impede maybe learners' progress or engagement with it, and trying to remove that before that can happen is a kind of really good move. Kit, do you want to just come back in? I saw your hand was up there.
That was, I put the data question in.
Oh, you did? Right, great. You wanted us to think that way. That's super. Thank you.
Do you have access to what? And if the answer to that question is no, what data is missing? I have my own opinion that we don't have access to the appropriate data because we can't trace learners through their entire learner journey. And how does the data from your primary school talk to your secondary schools? How does your BGE data talk to your senior phase data? How does all that link to their destinations, and can you walk a learner back through a journey and see why they were successful in their journey? Do you have access to that data? And if you don't, how do we do that?
A really nice provocation there, thank you, Kit. A lot for people to think about and to digest, and depending on where you are and how you fit in with that kind of learner journey and your role, I think there's certainly lots of kind of conversations that you might want to have on the back of this with those that you connect with in your kind of setting and beyond. Somebody's popped in here sharing the aspects of local positive destination data could encourage current pupils, giving relevant examples and role models. I absolutely think that kind of ties in back with one of the themes that Fiona alluded to earlier about kind of STEM being perceived as for white middle class grade males. And yet actually, as we're talking about, we all use STEM in our everyday lives, and that has been increasingly important. You know, just the kind of the science aspect of STEM and being outdoors through the pandemic and beyond. So yeah, absolutely sharing those positive stories to inspire children. So yes, actually, it can be like me or young people or learners, depending on who we work with. And that's actually just the blue point post-it note that somebody's picked up there. Beginning STEM activities earlier on for children can make a really big difference. I'm just going to invite Fiona to come in and share your thoughts, Fiona.
Hi, yeah, I've just seen it's the pink post-it note that somebody's written. I really enjoyed that one because it's talking about language choice and course choice booklets, and you know, whether it's more masculine and feminine, and actually who's that likely to appeal to in terms of self-identity. So for me, that's a really important point, and hopefully the data guides go into that a little bit more as well to explore that theme. So thank you for that one.
Thanks, Fiona. And just before we move on from this discussion, and we invite Margie from Braze to share their experience of considering this with us, there's just that little kind of post-it note right in the middle that said it could lead to focused discussions with learners to establish reasons as to why they don't choose STEM and what would make it more appealing to them, so that we can learn from learners' experience and sort of adapt our practice beyond that to impact positively on future learners and future generations, so we don't have that repeat of the 35-year gap as shown by gender at the start in terms of the graphs. So thank you so much for your contributions to the Jamboard and to the conversation there. We're going to move on now into the next wee excerpt. There's one last discussion at the end of this. Just to invite Marjorie, if you're able to come on the call. Marjorie is a deputy at Braze High School who has a STEM background, and we have been linking with her over the last wee while. So Marjorie, if you wouldn't mind just coming in and sharing your experience, that'd be much appreciated. I'm just going to check that we've not lost Marjorie off the call. Are you noticing? Okay, maybe what we'll do is we'll come back to Braze. I'll maybe just come off and we'll email. I'll email Marjorie and just check that she's not managed to drop off and not get back in. So if you wouldn't mind moving on, if that would be great. Thank you so much. Fiona, are you able to speak about this while I just kind of contact Marjorie, please?
Yeah, no problem. So I suppose actually this kind of ties in quite nicely with what I was just saying, picking up from the Jamboard, but thinking about one of the ways in which this could be explored, and again through the pilot we've started to have these conversations with some settings, but One example is looking at options choice materials, so thinking about the format of it, how interactive, how usable it is for parents, for young people. You know, obviously everyone's busy, and it's thinking about how can that information be communicated in a way that's quick and also going to hook people in. So one of the ways that we explored with Skills Development Scotland was thinking about clustering subjects together and having that really intense focus on transferable skills rather than, I suppose, like that repeat of the SQA course, and trying to think about the information that makes it as useful as possible. One of the things that was key is sort of including case studies of former learners, so really having that learner voice in there as well. And that links closely, I suppose, to the idea that role models need to be relatable and attainable for young people, I suppose, to see themselves in those positions. So those case studies were seen as important as well. And then that variety of pathways, as lots of people have mentioned already through the Jamboard, and having those that parity there, not necessarily organising it by, you know, National 5 hires and then having the apprenticeships at the end. It was kind of weaving that through a little bit more and making it a bit more prominent, and I suppose just trying to provide that information that they're not lesser, you know, that the equivalence of those in terms of the SCQF levels as well. And then I think, you know, in terms of the gender balance element of all of that, highlighting those transferable skills can be useful for that, and also making sure that the images are diverse, not just in terms of gender, but other characteristics as well. So these were just a couple of considerations, as I say, that we had with settings and with Skills Development Scotland as one of the examples. And you know, moving forwards, if people would like to work with us and Skills Development Scotland on that, we'll come to sort of suggestions around this at the end, but please do let us know and get in touch, and I'm happy to share the sort of research so far. I can see Marjorie's back on the call, so that's good. Mary, I don't know if you want to add anything to what I've said around that, but otherwise we can maybe jump to Marjorie.
No, I think that was great. Thank you so much for doing that, Fiona. If we can just, Julie, go back one slide to Marjorie. Thank you so much. And thanks for your perseverance there, Marjorie, and thanks for your patience, folks.
Don't we just love technology? Can you hear me? Perfect. Okay, I don't think I'm going to be saying too much different to the themes that are coming across tonight, but I've just introduced myself to those who don't know me. I'm Marjorie Cotton. I'm the Deputy Head at Braes High School, and part of my role at Braes is line managing the STEM faculties. And we've been on a journey, as I'm sure we all have been for some time, and have had lots of STEM inputs over the years. And then last October, we got this opportunity to participate in the STEM Diversity Pilot with Education Scotland. And Maddie has asked me then to kind of just talk about the things that we've been looking at since then. So at that time, my Faculty of Science, who kind of really leads on STEM across the school, we identified a number of things we wanted to improve. And again, all of these themes have been coming up this evening, which is really good. Our main focus was on setting out clearer STEM pathways for our young people, but not just in the secondary setting, but cluster-wide, starting it as early as possible, and increasing the staff understanding of those pathways beyond Braes through improved partnership working. I'm just going to speak about a little bit about of some of these things over the last 6 or 7 months that we've been looking at. So our STEM Transition programme, our STEM Transition has been running for a number of years and probably isn't too dissimilar to the kind of things that many schools have already been doing. It was in the form of science days, and our P7s would be invited up and come and spend the full day in science, doing experimental work. And that was a very successful, well anticipated and received by our new starters and their parents. But the pandemic obviously made it much more difficult, and we were really struggling to think how could we still offer this opportunity to our associated primaries. It did afford us the opportunity to look at a completely different way, and we introduced our STEM leaders who work. They choose this as part of their personal development option, and they have this year delivered and planned virtual sessions with all of our primaries, carrying on online experiments, stimulating activities, and STEM challenges for our P7s. And you'll see in the little screenshots of the Twitter feedback, the feedback from the primary staff and pupils was extremely positive. and they all had lots of fun and lots of stimulation. But for us, there was also a really added bonus that we saw a real development in our own STEM leaders who've grown in confidence, particularly around their communication skills, and they've spoken at parent council meetings online and done lots of numerous other activities, and I'll mention a wee bit later. So you can imagine we're really keen to build on this as we move forward. So moving forward, another opportunity that's come through with the STEM Diversity Pilot was that we've had discussions with Samantha Clark from Heriot Watt, and Sam shared with us some of the interdisciplinary projects that their team have developed for the BGE in STEM subjects. And we're now planning to further develop our transitions programme by training our new cohort, next session's cohort of STEM leaders at Heriot Watt, with staff from Heriot Watt and students from Heriot Watt, to deliver the robotics projects to our transitions programme next year for next year's P7 at this time. So in addition, we're also looking at rolling forward that leadership opportunity for our current STEM leaders to share their experience and their practice with the next group of STEM leaders. So it's been really kind of a win-win for us in terms of stimulating our youngest learners to find out more about STEM and developing skills for life in those who are already engaged in STEM activities. STEM pathways, it was another big focus for us, and COVID has meant that we couldn't deliver what we normally deliver, and we normally would have an in-person careers fair / course choice session in the evening for parents and pupils, and that's bringing together lots of partners, lots of friends of Grays, lots of parents to come and talk about their jobs and stimulate young people in not just STEM areas. But that we then created a thing like with video inserts from Friends of Grays highlighting different pathways in response to COVID. However, discussions with Ian and other partners from Education Scotland was that the research tells us that young people and their parents are most likely to listen to the class teachers about their course choices and careers advice. So for that left us thinking, well, actually our staff don't feel as upskilled, they don't feel as confident, and we've got a bit of work to do in that area. So we've decided that the importance of those classroom conversations, that we need to work with our staff, develop a greater understanding about STEM careers and pathways. And so in doing that, we've been looking at, across all the STEM subjects, sort of 60-second snappy videos, inserts, that we could run at the beginning alongside when young people are coming into the classroom, alongside the lesson starter, to kind of stimulate that discussion with the classroom teacher. And I think it was really interesting to hear STEM with Miss Lorraine. I was really quite fascinated, because obviously that's also another way of dealing with it. But we were hoping to kind of do short, snappy videos so that would stimulate that discussion in the classroom. The second way that we've been looking to continue our STEM pathways was to build a greater understanding for our staff about the progressions in Forth Valley College. And I know Karen from Larbert's going to be talking a bit more about how they've done this. The new campus, for those of you who are right with Falkirk, new campus at Forth Valley College in Falkirk opened in January 2020, so just before the start of the pandemic, and most of the courses from there on started to revert to online, and now our access to the college has naturally been slightly limited since then. So we're really on a journey with that, with across the STEM subjects. But my Faculty of Data Science has recently had a visit with our to the new campus, and our STEM staff came back really enthused, not just about the resources that they have at the college and how we could use them jointly, and how we can look at our different courses, but also about the courses they have offered, because there definitely was a lack of understanding of the progression pathways beyond Grays High School. So I think we're definitely going to continue to build a stronger partnership with the college staff to deliver both and extend our course offer at Grays, and to promote pathways to the courses that they have on offer. Also, in terms of our STEM ambassadors and our diversity, last month we had 3 of our senior girls who acted as STEM ambassadors from the school, contributing to the Women into STEM project, which Fiona had led. And they carried out a significant project that promoted STEM pathways for younger learners in their BGE and careers, and specifically for women. And I think they were particularly, they presented at their showcase event, and I think particularly really good role models for females in STEM subjects. Grace High School is actually a fairly young school, and as such we're only really starting to see ex-pupils coming through the education system and become secure in their careers. So we're now beginning to build up our directory of ex-pupils, parents and friends of Grace who can stand in as STEM ambassadors to give real life lesson inserts, so having them along to appropriate points. But Fiona has also been directing us to STEM ambassador database where we can advertise for specific pathways. So I think that's where we're really looking to kind of build on those areas and have it built into the session. This has just been a flavour. I mean, there's lots of things we're going to be looking at, but these are the kind of main parts, and we're still on our STEM journey, but it is always going to be a work in progress. But I think our staff, given very difficult circumstances, have been really trying really hard to engage young people and to upskill themselves and get involved so that we can move STEM on. But as I said, from a very early stage all the way through to beyond Grace High School. Happy to take any questions.
That's great, thank you so much, Marjorie. I wondered if people maybe have questions, can they pop them in the chat and you maybe will be able to answer them that way if that would work for you. Thank you so much. And I think that what was really nice to hear was that kind of you're building on that breadth of learning coming through and you're taking it forward and developing those partnerships as well. And you spoke very openly and honestly about where you are as a school and how you know the great work that's already happened and how you're continuing to move that forward. So thank you so much for you joining us this afternoon and for sharing your story and your journey with STEM in Breeze, and we're delighted to continue to partner with you and hear how that moves forward even more so. And Ian saying thank you, and Kirsten saying actually she'll feedback about the idea about the kind of little inserts. That'd be kind of really useful for SDS in my world of work to be able to hear and to know that could be useful. So folks, I'm going to pass on to Karen, who is the deputy at Larbert High School, and she's going to be talking about how they've used the data hub that Kit spoke about and how that's influencing their curriculum. So Karen, over to you. Thank you so much for coming along too.
No, thank you for inviting me. And probably what I'm going to talk about is a little bit more general, and although you can definitely use it for STEM, you can actually use it for a lot of sorts of different things. So as Marjorie rightly said, we've got a really good relationships with Forth Valley College, and I think it was probably when we're talking about alternative pathways and really trying to make sure that there are pathways for the 30% that go to university. That's wonderful, but what about those other 70, and trying to make sure that we're building those pathways for them, and we've really started to do that through college, and then with getting that positive momentum there, we're really bringing in those alternative pathways at Larbert High School through MPAs, through level 5 lab science. And what we've been really working hard on is completely and utterly transforming the language that we're using. So we don't, well, we're still at the beginning of this, but still not using high or not using National 5. We are using SCQF levels. We've transformed all of our pathway routes on our website to SCQF levels, so that they've got the range there as well. So I think that's been the bigger picture. That's been really important, and we've used the pathways from Forth Valley College, like the foundation apprenticeships and HNCs, to change mindsets of pupils, of staff and of parents, and then that's really helping to bring in those different sorts of NPAs and things at school level as well. So I think that's been really important. But one of the ways in which we've done that well is through the 16+ Data Hub, and as you said, Fiona or Mari, I can't remember who, but you said the Data Hub starts from S4, where we capture the information where their intended sectors are, what they're interested in. But what we've done as a school is actually bring that in from S1. So we've made that part of our curriculum review. So the very first thing that we do is ask the pupils what they want to do, what sector they want to go into, do they have a specific job that they're interested in? And then the next year we go back and look at what they've done. So a little bit what Kit was talking about. And we go back and say, so last year you wanted to do this, and is that still the case? And it's it's a nice conversation to start off with, where they can sometimes have a giggle and say, oh my God, in S1 I wanted to be an astronaut, or whatever. And then you start to see them change their minds, and some of them don't change their minds. So we've incorporated that from S1, but as Kit said, that could be something that I suppose could come from the primary schools as well, actually. So we, in our step 1, and you can see here we've got a 5-step program essentially that we use to really help market and change the mindset and make people aware of the different opportunities that are available. So positive destination capture form, That then gets pulled into a spreadsheet, and we've got that from S1 right up to S6. We then pull that information and we share that with our pupil support team. We share it with all the principal teachers and people like that. And that means that they can pull on that information at any point that they're having a meaningful conversation, a learner conversation with those pupils. But also it gives me a chance, as my remit with DYW, that when opportunities come in or work experience opportunities comes in, I actually share that out as well. And I sometimes ask the office to pull the data and say, who is it in S3, S4 that wants to be a vet? There's an online work experience opportunity that's available, and it means then we can send that information home to those specific pupils. So that's one strand that we use the Data Hub for, to really specifically look at opportunities. But where we've made a huge impact is through our pathways. So, for example, with Forth Valley College, say we've got the foundation apprenticeship in engineering. That has been a massive one. We use the Data Hub spreadsheet to pull all the pupils who have been interested in engineering, and we then send them a targeted specific letter to say, we know that you are interested in engineering. Here are opportunities that are available. We check that with the pupil support team that those pupils would be able for a foundation apprenticeship, that the progression to level 6 would be viable for them, or would it be a skills for work level 5, or, you know, etc., so that we're targeting the right pupil with the right level, with the right subject. And we essentially send targeted letters to parents to really celebrate and say, look, we're aware of what your child wants to do. Here is what we think that, or how they could excel. And we then put on, and I think this is the main thing here, it's about marketing, it's about assemblies, it's about information sessions. And we make sure that there is a plethora of those for the pupils, but also for the parents and staff as well. So we do, you know, I do information sessions during the day for certain parents, but I also do them in the evening. We used to tag on to parents' evening so that we could capture people at parents' evening instead of saying, don't leave if you want to hear more about. So there was also that element where they were quite intrigued to see what's going on. But as Marjorie said, with the pandemic, it's been really difficult. So we've had to really kind of adapt and do that online, but it's still worked. Like the last foundation apprenticeship workshop, I had 100 people log on to it, which was just phenomenal. And I think that shows the mindset is changing, where probably at the beginning of this journey, maybe 5 years ago, I would have had 30, you know, and now we've got 100 listening to that journey of the foundation apprenticeships. We then bring the college in and we do assemblies with the pupils as well, and we have specific ones for specific courses to say, you know, come and hear more about it. And the key thing is, again, is talking about the Data Hub. We bring in pupils that have maybe done that foundation apprenticeship or that HNC before, and they actually come back and speak to the parents and the pupils about that course. But it doesn't stop there, and the important part is what were the next steps after that is they leave, you know, and they're all excited, and then you just hope that they actually apply. So we make sure that within that we've got a programme of college support sessions where they can come along and get support to apply, because most of them have never written a personal statement in their lives before. They don't really know what that entails. So it's a kind of supported structure in place to help them get, you know, take advantage of the opportunity of getting onto that course. So there's lots of different ways that we target and make sure that we share that information, and then we try and make sure that there's a way to bring it all together at the end, which has worked really, really well. But I think the most important thing is that this isn't a standalone thing. There's been lots of different work and elements that have been feeding into that. And if you just move to the next slide, we have started to evolve and change mindsets and talk about different levels. But across Falkirk, and Marjorie, I'll tell you that, you know, there has been a bigger picture to that where all Falkirk schools have aligned their timetables to match so that it doesn't negatively affect, you know, pupils' other subjects, or it doesn't eat into their time. So all Falkirk schools are aligned, which allows those pupils to access that properly, and also it allows us to take advantage of consortia, and that's probably where we've had, you know, an increased uptake there as well. So there's been lots of different positive things that have been going on, but certainly I have found that the market and the targeted letters home have been, and they're mail merged, so it says Julie has, and it's really specifically talking about individuals, and that's then made them feel special. It's made them feel like, especially the parents, oh wow, let's just go hear more about that. And then it's great when the ex-pupils come in and say, look, it is well worth it, and actually as a result of my foundation apprenticeship, I'm now going to university, where actually that wasn't an opportunity for me before. I just didn't think it would be a pathway. Or the other route where they said, I thought I would go to uni, but college turned out to be the better option for me, etc., etc. But there's so much in there, so I'm more than happy to answer questions if anybody's got any specific questions to ask.
That's great, Karen. I think folks might pop that into the chat. We are going to pass on to Julie's going to introduce Anna Callie and Callie in a moment. We're going to skip the last discussion, folks, so don't worry that we're going to hold you on much beyond 5 o'clock this evening, but we are going to miss that out just in the interest of time. So thanks so much, Karen, for that really insightful input, and good to hear how you're using all that information that you have right back. Linking in when the children come in S1. Hopefully in 35 years less than, we'll have a different story for STEM too. So thank you so much for sharing that journey that you are continuing to be on too. So thanks. Over to you, Julie.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'd just like to introduce Anne Callie, who's a CLD practitioner from Falkirk. My first post-COVID visit out was to go and visit the allotment teens group. And she's just here today to share a bit about that group and the impact that that's had on the learners' journeys. So over to you, Anne Callie. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. So I'm in St Mungo's High School, and I'm a community learning and development worker. So part of my role is obviously working in very close partnership with school and working with targeted young people. So for a variety of reasons, it could be targeted because they have additional support needs and need further support. Obviously, with post COVID, there's been a lot of young people that have really struggled to come back into school. So the past year, I've been working with a group of young people and doing a variety of awards. So basically, it's like a package of awards. So it all comes under kind of St Mungo's CLD Achieve School. And that's my dog in the background that's now choosing to be a nuisance, sorry. So the group of young people that I've been working with have been doing some work on the allotment, and Julie came out to visit over the Easter holidays. And the benefit, I suppose, of CLD work in schools is that it not only, obviously I can be there during term time, with timetabled young people, but I can also carry on during the holidays and extend that to working with the families. So the allotment team group have been working on a calendar part allotment site, and have kind of had the benefit of doing some work in schools, but also some work in the community as well. And I this year partnered with TCV, the Conservation Volunteers, who has provided a whole wealth of expertise on being outdoors, climate change, the environment, and they've been clearing an allotment site as part of their multiple awards. So some of the awards that they work on, we've got kind of quite clever in that they do one piece of work and it can fit into a variety of awards. So they do their Duke of Edinburgh, which is made up of different sections, which also fits into their Dynamic Youth Awards, Youth Achievement Awards, and also Prince's Trust Achieve Awards. So for those that are young people that are targeted, that are not destined to leave school with the complement of qualifications ready for college or beyond, are actually able then to achieve a variety of awards, including Saltire volunteering, which obviously for a lot of employers, that's something, and the colleges as well, is something that they really look for now in young people. So I suppose a large part of the work is about, developing those transferable skills, the life skills, the progression, and it has that positive impact on the pathways. For a lot of young people, sometimes they don't know what their skills are, and they need to sort of realise what their skills are by trying lots of different things. So obviously this year they were doing the allotment, as well as their Duke of Edinburgh, which then helped to kind of open up some of those transferable skills and the employability skills. So, you know, working with others, working in a team, looking at timekeeping, building their confidence. And, you know, it can be working through feelings and building that resilience. I think a lot of the work also has to include that mental health and well-being, and looking at the 5 ways to well-being. And it also helps them then to set targets for themselves, which is something which, because they're not necessarily within a classroom environment, they're maybe not used to sort of setting those targets on what they want to do, or can feel a little bit lost on where they want to go or what they want to do. And I suppose the volunteering does provide really good links to pathways. They may have one idea about what they want to do when they leave school, but by trying lots of different things and doing some volunteering within a lot of community groups as well, I have those links, then it can help them actually to try things out and then find what pathway that they have an interest in. And you'll see some of the photographs actually at the bottom of some of the young people. These are some of the bits of work that we've actually been doing. And I work in very close partnership with a lot of community groups. I think the benefit of being a community worker and being out in the community as well is having those links with different community groups that, you know, can help to sort of support young people in developing those pathways and doing those kind of skills sharing. So I've worked with the Denny and Bonnybridge Men's Shed, so that's, you can see just at the bottom of the screen. I took a group of boys there that have been making bird boxes, and they've actually, you know, they made them from breaking up pallets to actually sort of learning how to follow the instructions, and working with, it's also intergenerational work because they're working with a local community group as well. And one of the benefits was some of those bird boxes then got put up at the allotment site, so there's a lot of kind of crossing over, and they've just found it really, really beneficial. I'm just looking at my slides now to see where I was going to. So I've also, one of the benefits were over the Scottish Book Week, the groups also visited the Denny Writers as well, which is a community group again, and had an experience of, you know, doing some creative writing, which again slightly different to being in a classroom setting, but obviously still using some of those same skills, which they really, really enjoyed. I think also the important thing to say is obviously about the community development and capacity building side, that sometimes it's necessary to work with the families as well and to develop their capacity to support the young people or their children into learning. And I think particularly with COVID and having such long periods at home, and then having huge anxieties and losing all those social skills and the social cues especially, has been a particular struggle for a lot of young people, and having sort of increased mental health and wellbeing struggles. So it's quite good then to sort of include the family and build their capacity to deal with some of the issues at home, and also extending those volunteering opportunities to families, obviously because we have the holiday programs where it does then open it up to the family to join their children in the learning environments and the outdoors work. It's kind of opened up those pathways as well. And I know something that's coming up is obviously the adult awards as well, that's just being developed at the moment through sort of CLD and Falkirk. That's something that we're currently looking at, and I think that's quite important as well, is offering opportunities to families as well. And I think one of the biggest benefits has also been that kind of sense of ownership that the young people have on the programmes that they do, because they're a part of planning that. And it also opens up their understanding of local issues within their own community, which means that it can be linked in with other sort of community learning and development happening on the ground and other community groups. So it just it's kind of a holistic approach you know, to kind of strengthening, building skills and building the capacity of not only the young people, but also of the families. Excuse me. So I know there is a second slide on that. So this is some of the kind of the impacts. Each year I do a kind of a big report on the sort of full year, and that gets fed back into the school for the PEF reporting, but also to CLD as well. And it just shows some of the impact, you know, some of what the young people have said, and also the parents or carer feedback. I think is quite critical to kind of hear that and to gather that, because it isn't just about the youth learning, it's about the family learning as well. And then obviously there's some sort of statistics as well on some of the achievements this year.
Thank you very much, Anne-Callie. That was brilliant, and just the huge impact that the work's having on these young people who are now re-engaging with school or going into these different positive destinations. So thank you very much for sharing that journey with us.
Absolutely, so powerful, such a powerful message that you've shared there, and thank you so much. It was really good to hear that directly from yourself. And I think there's a couple of wee questions and kind of comments in the chat that you might want to pick up if you've not had a chance to see. And we're just kind of conscious of time. I'm going to pass on, Julie, if you can move on to the kind of the very last slide, and just wrap us up this evening.
Yes, a special thanks to all the presenters. I really enjoyed hearing about all the practice, the activities, the activities that people are sort of taking forward to really try to promote diversity within STEM pathways and to support learners and obviously, as Anne-Callie said, wider families. Just to finish, I said at the beginning this was part sharing and part invitation. So, really to reinforce that invitation that we mentioned at the beginning is that we want to work with more schools on these types of approaches. Is something that is really central to the STEM strategy, but also to, as Kit said, to the Scottish Attainment Challenge. And really, we're looking for schools to work with us, to collaborate with us. We don't have all the answers, but we've seen some of the things that the schools are trying to take forward. We think it's really important to share that practice, but to support in any way that we can as well. And we've got a lot to learn from schools and the particular challenges and barriers they're facing or things that are working well. So would you like to collaborate? And there's different ways you can do that. We would like to keep this conversation going with a group of schools or other CLD groups to see how we can make progress in this area. So if you really want to be part of this, and if your school is really interested in being involved, or your centre really interested in being involved, just let us know. We've got the email address there at the bottom, just the stem@educationscotland.gov.scot email, and we can put that in the chat as well. We've developed professional learning to support this, to really help teachers and practitioners understand the influence they've got to shape and inform pathways and to support learners. So again, if you think there's professional learning that might be helpful or you might want to be part of, please just let us know, and just, if you can give us an idea of what might be particularly helpful, we can take it from there. But we've also got a programme we've developed too. And as Fiona mentioned, it could simply be looking at sharing your subject option material that you send out to parents and learners. We're happy to work with you, provide some feedback on that, provide some comments, maybe share some of the examples from other schools as well. So if you really want to be involved in that, so looking at your option material and then how you're promoting and shaping this, then let us know. Or if there's something else you want to work with us on, again, we're just really happy to have that chat with you. So the key thing here in all of this, just to summarise, if you're interested in being involved, please contact us at that email address and we'll get back to you. But thank you everybody for your time today. Thank you especially to all the presenters. Mary, just hand over to you to finish.
Yeah, no, just folks, just today, thank you so much. We know we have run over a wee bit, apologies for that, but we really do value your giving up your time at the end of a busy day, particularly as we move towards the end of May and end of a busy year. And thank you in particular to our guest speakers, to Karen, to Marjorie and to Anne-Callie. We couldn't have done it without you, so thank you so much, and we look forward to continuing to link with you and to hear about the story in your setting. And as Ian says, have a lovely evening and keep in touch. Take care.